All right, so in a lot of my videos, I talk about how the track is never good nor bad. It's simply the way it is, and you just have to adapt and ride it the best that you can. Well, I'm at Thunder Valley right now. I just got off the track for my warm-up moto, was able to kind of scope it out, see what the condition is like and everything. Honestly, I already felt pretty good, but what I'm going to explain right now is kind of how I'm approaching the rest of the day and how I'm using literally that exact saying of like adapt to the track conditions. And I'm going to explain kind of how I'm adapting to these conditions. If you don't know me, I'm Logan Lesser, a national motocross racer, having won over 15 state championships and an amateur national championship. I'm an extreme sports athlete and ran a marketing agency for over 4 years, growing it to $30,000 a month. And while doing so, was able to travel the world living in Cape Town, South Africa, part-time throughout the past few years. And I've spent nearly $50,000 on mentors, coaches, courses, and education, learning from the best of the best in business, fitness, mindset, racing, and so on. Now I'm sharing what I've learned and growing my community, the Champion Protocol, linked in the description below. All right, so the track today is actually, I like it. I think it's actually pretty good. So it's a little drier for sure. They're doing some watering right now, so it should be pretty good. But they dug it, luckily they dug it deep enough to where it's gonna be pretty soft, you know, or at least it is right now. But to give you an idea, there's no real hard packed deep ruts or anything. It's mainly almost like small little berms as ruts, and they're not like you can't just come in and just sink into them and sit down and just grab on the gas, because otherwise you're probably gonna blow it out or slide out or something like that. So with the track condition today, the biggest thing is probably going to be really throttle control, and then leaning, turning by leaning the bike instead of turning the bars, which I've talked about that in quite a few videos. But the reason that I want to do that on the track today is because since it's so soft and it's not super tacky and everything, and there's not a whole lot of traction because it's pretty soft and kind of drier, so it's definitely a little slicker and stuff. And in the corners, since there's not really ruts that you can just literally just haul ass into and then just sit down and be able to bank off of, if you know what I mean. And since they're softer, and also they're not tall berms, they're pretty small, so you can't just come in and lean it over kind of on a sand berm or something like that. So the reason I'm saying leaning the bike is because if I come into the corner decently fast or whatever, and there's not really much of a berm for my bike to kind of bank off of, I guess, or a berm to catch me, I guess you could say, without me blowing through it and stuff. If I come into it super hard and then I turn the bars in order to turn, you know, I just come in straight and then I turn the bars to try to turn, that's gonna make it so easy to blow out the tiny berm that there is, or it's just gonna make it super easy, since it's a little drier and soft, it's gonna make it easy to wash out that front end. And by the way, I've talked about it in other videos, but this whole turning by leaning the bike instead of turning the bars, it's not something to only do on the conditions today. That's something that I do all the time. Even you might think oh, well, what this is actually a question I asked to Jerry Masterpool years ago, because he's the one I learned this from regarding leaning the bike and stuff. And I asked him, I was like, okay, well, what if I'm going through a rut and there's a hook in it, you know? Because sometimes you're going through a rut and there's a super tight hook or whatever. You would think that you would turn the bars super quick in order to hit that hook. But what he told me is he's you lean over more, you lean into that hook. And what's interesting is that once I started doing that, I was like, holy shit, this actually works. And the way that I would think about it is that if you're going through a rut and there's a super tight hook at some point in it, if you go into that hook and you turn the bars, then it's going to make it very easy for you to wash out the front end, or kind of tuck the front end going through that hook. Or you're going to turn the bars and the wheel is going to come into that hook almost at an angle, which will make it a lot more abrupt, and you'll hit hard, and that's when you stab your foot. You know that a lot of times when there's a rut and there's a hook in it, that's a lot of the times where you do end up stabbing your foot, which I used to do that a lot, going through the corners where you got your foot up, you got your foot out, and then you stab it in order to keep yourself from falling over. And then another thing is that if you go to turn the bars like that, same thing with the conditions today, it'll just make it really easy to, when you get to that hook, for you to kind of blow it out or something, and then boom, you probably wash out the front end and go down. Whereas if you're going through the rut and you're leaning, and then you see the hook coming and you lean the bike further over, it's kind of hard to explain, but it literally allows the bike to just glide right through the hook. It's kind of hard to explain in a video, so you're just gonna have to take my word for it and actually try it. And when you do, next time you're at a track where there's a rut with a decent hook in it, I'm telling you, like, don't turn the bars, just lean the bike over more when you get to the hook, and I guarantee you're gonna be like, holy shit, like that was really smooth. So yeah, because like usually when there's a hook in a rut or whatever, it's super like abrupt and hard, whereas when you lean over the bike more, it makes it very, very smooth. So anyway, yeah, going back to the conditions today, like I said, it's soft, a little drier, not really any ruts yet or any deep ruts that I can like really go fast into and be able to kind of like catch me, I guess you could say. So it'll be a lot more about like throttle control and leaning the bike over, as well as it's going to be about angles, because when there's not really a rut or whatever to catch me, I can't like come into the rut, or if there was a rut, I'd be able to come into it a bit more straight and then be able to kind of just sink into it. Whereas since it's like this and there's not really much of a berm or anything to catch me, then if I come into it super fast, like head on, then it'll make it very easy for me to like blow it out or go over the line that I'm trying to take and everything, because I come in too hot, and then if I get on the brakes too hard, I might wash out the front end coming in. Whereas if I open up the corner and I come into it more rounded like this, then I'll be able to come in faster and just be able to hit that line that I want to much better versus coming into it like straight head on. Hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, so those are the biggest things. Like if you're ever riding a track that has the conditions like this, where it's a little drier, soft, there's not really ruts, but instead like small berms through the corners, I guess you could say. And then there's also not much of a berm or rut like coming into the corner. It's more towards like coming out of it at the end. Then basically what I also forgot to mention standing longer. So when you're riding these conditions, the biggest stuff is going to be coming into it at an angle and kind of opening up the corner, and then throttle control, just being careful on the throttle and not like absolutely just like going wide open in the corner and then obviously blowing it out and sliding out everything. It's more of a smooth gas. And then turning by leaning the bike versus turning the bars and everything. That's a big one for today. And then another one I didn't mention is weighting the outside peg. You really want to be pushing on that outside peg with the ball of your foot while you're going through these corners, because it is slicker and drier. So you want to be doing that. And then I also will stand pretty long through these corners, especially if there's not really much of a rut or whatever towards the beginning of it. I'll usually stand until the point where there is, and then I'll sit there. That's kind of preference though. Like I think that's kind of depending on how you ride and how you feel and everything, because for me, I've always had an issue of washing out the front end and falling that way, which it's a lot easier to do that when I'm sitting down. It's like I come into the corner and then I'm sitting down. It's a lot easier for me to turn the bars and wash out the front end. Whereas when I'm standing up, I'm able to more easily like lean the bike over and not turn the handlebars, and then basically kind of glide through the corner. And then as soon as I get to the point where there's like a decent berm or a decent rut, then I kind of can sit into it and then get on the gas. So hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to touch on. So if you want to join my online community or check out any of my like fitness programs or other stuff, link to that is in the description below this video. If you like stuff like this, feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.